Thank you for sticking with me through the last episode of Speaking Through the Fog. I was rushing. I didn't really get to talk about much, which was really hard for me because I love just like continuing on a subject or expanding on a certain thing. But I mean, my first take was 20 minutes and that was way too long. So this is the next episode of Speaking Through the Fog, the section about chronic fatigue. This one I'm super excited about and I was like wanting to record it because it's about the names that chronic fatigue has had, and it brings up a little bit of psychology and linguistics, which is anthropology, and both of those are fields I'm interested in. There were things that I was getting my degree in before I got sick, so let's talk about it. So some of the names chronic fatigue syndrome had, I'm going to probably repeat names over because the websites I was getting this from, they brought it up maybe again and again because it would like be suggested, the name, and then retracted, and then it would come up again later. So fabricula, neurasthenia, nervous exhaustion, those were some I talked about last time. Atypical polymyelitis, a Curie disease, simulating polymyelitis, abortive polymyelitis, mass hysteria, Iceland's disease, royal free disease, Tapanu flu, benign myalgic encephalomyelitis, epidemic neuromyasthenia, chronic Epstein-Barr virus syndrome, chronic mononucleosis syndrome, Raphael nucleus encephalopathy, low natural killer cell disease, atypical polymyelitis, epidemic vasculitis, chronic fatigue syndrome, post-viral fatigue syndrome, chronic fatigue immune dysfunction syndrome, myalgic encephalopathy, chronic neuroendocrine immune dysfunction, syndrome, yuppie flu, systemic exertion intolerance disease, and that's the most common or the most recent one. So a lot of hard to pronounce names. I probably pronounced them wrong. It shows kind of in a way, just looking at the names shows the kind of history of the different views on the disease, the different epidemics, and also the different things they were thinking was causing the disease. And so what is the big deal about the name? I mean, there was a 20-30 year pause in research and funding because of the name chronic fatigue syndrome. Why were people so mad about it? Why did it change public view? And well, this is where I'm going to get a little bit into psychology and linguistics. So names and words, the part of the brain that processes them, part of the brain that brings them like into the mind's eye is the frontal lobe, and the frontal lobe is what's responsible for the craziness when you're a teenager. It's the social reasoning center. It'll process the word. It'll think about what we've experienced in the past, the word kind of, when we've heard the word, when we've seen the word. So the word dawdle and meander, when you say those words, they bring up this slow kind of walking, or awkward, gawky. You think of this like knobbly, like skinny, just like ungainly person. Those are some words New York Times brought up. My words are wart. The name or the sound wart is just kind of disgusting. Whereas the name or the word lyrical just rolls off the tongue. It's just this beautiful musical word. Now, some words that I want to say that I always feel like they're supposed to be good, but I think kind of sound disgusting, are frothy latte. I'm not thinking of this like delicious latte. I'm thinking of this frothy latte, or moist cake. Ugh, that doesn't sound good. Moist. Ugh, just doesn't sound like a good word to me. So words the way that they're said, the way that they're they've been viewed, all of that. And in linguistics, they have analyzed the different words and the sounds and how we make them in our mouth, and how different ways that we make them, how it makes us view the word. So another example is, if I say I was driving north up a hilly terrain, you're going to think, or if I say, okay, let me say that again. If I'm driving north across the hilly terrain, see, I just messed myself up even with this thought. You guys are going to be thinking uphill. And if I say I'm going to go south through a hilly terrain, you're going to think downhill. The reason why is because on maps, north is always up and south is always down. And ancient map makers, when they first were making maps, actually this one Australian map maker was really mad because it seems like north takes precedent over south. And we always think north is up, south is down. So, see, these words, north, south, have meaning to us beyond just the words. And it's got a little bit of history of why this would be. The other thing, I have other examples of words, and they have to be very careful in car crash cases in court. Their wording of how the two cars hit each other, contact each other, doesn't sound like they went very fast, right? If they contacted each other, I think of kind of like maybe it would be like a fender bender. They're at a stoplight, somebody contacted them a little softly. Whereas smashed, you're thinking smashed into each other, right? So they did do a study about that, and most of the people listed contact, their average, they thought they were going less speed than when you say smashed. They thought the person was probably going at a faster speed. The other thing is hit compared to smashed into each other. Hit, people said there was smashed glass at the scene when there wasn't, whereas smashed, more people said there was probably glass at the scene and when there wasn't. So it shows that one word can even change people's memory of a scene. Another example was during my criminology class. This teacher had this person come in and steal their purse, and the students didn't know that was going to happen. Now the students got up to go chase him, and she said, sit down, this is an example. Now I want you to think of what the guy looked like, because we're going to talk about how dependable witnesses are at a crime scene. And they said you could talk about anything, whether the person had a beard, maybe a hat, just whatever you can think of. Well, those two sentences, almost everybody in class remembered the person had a beard and a hat. But the person didn't have a beard and a hat. They only got the suggestion from the teacher saying that, which was intentional on the teacher's part. They show that how easy a person's memory is influenced by just, somebody talking about something. So words are power. Words can influence somebody's perception. That's why when picking a name, it's such a big deal. There's naming ceremonies all over the world. And picking a name, my generation is more into like unusual sounding names, but they found that the unusual sounding names tend to be less popular. They don't tend to be as successful. They don't tend to be as powerful. They also found that people who had white sounding names, they passed out all these resumes, these fake resumes. Some of them had names like Jamal or Lakeisha or, Carlos or whatever. And then they had ones with white sounding names like Emily, Greg, John. And it was in the Chicago, Boston area. And they found that the resumes with white sounding names prompted 50% higher callback rates from employers. So that's really high. And all of this I'm taking out of studies. It's just not my personal experience. It's actual scientific data. And then like as far as popularity, like in school and high school and stuff, think about it. Like when you think of Brittany or Brad or, Tiffany, you think of these like really popular people, maybe not super smart, but they're usually the top echelon. So even that, just the social influence behind names actually tends to come true just because that's what we expect of them. So names just have these powers. So chronic fatigue syndrome, this name brings up, it's basically just saying, it sounds like the person's always tired, negating all the other symptoms or how debilitating this tiredness is. It's not just tiredness of body, it's mind, it's not just like sleepy, it's body, mind, just everything, it just drains you. Whereas, what it sounds like is just the person's really super sleepy. And in a nation where 1 out of every 3 people get 6 or under hours of sleep on average, it makes it sound like this person is way more of a whiner because everybody's tired. I wear this shirt. I can't know. It says low battery. And I get more compliments on it, more people saying I feel like I have a low battery as well. And I'm always like, yeah, it's, everybody's tired, So that's why it kind of made the public just think that the people were whiners. These people were, getting this thing diagnosed that everybody basically has. And that's why I think systemic exertion intolerance disease is bad, because people are, and this is another study, people are more likely to remember names that are easier to say. So that's why chronic fatigue syndrome is so easy to remember, whereas myalgic encephalitis wasn't, because it was like a mouthful, not as easy to say, not as easy to remember. Systemic exertion intolerance disease doesn't roll off the tongue, for one. It's hard for me to remember because it's not words that are used very often. And I also think it almost brings up like, okay, so this person has exertion intolerance. Well, that means they can't exercise, right? Well, a lot of people can't exercise. I don't like exercise. My husband might have chronic or systemic exertion intolerance disease because he won't get his ass out of the chair to go take out the garbage. So I still don't think it's a proper name for what this disease, this life debilitating disease, does. I think, and this is just as an author, me as myself, that we are placing too much, the government and the people doing the naming are placing too much importance on symptoms or cause. Why don't we take a step back and name it after an actual name of a person, like Crohn's disease or Tourette's syndrome or Parkinson's disease? These names honor a person, but they also merit more research. You hear Parkinson's disease, it doesn't tell you what the disease is about. And so you're like, wow, it sounds not only serious because it's named after a person, but I want to know more about it. So like Whitney Defoe's disease, why don't we name it that? That's the son of the researcher who has been very important in the advocacy and the advances in chronic fatigue syndrome. Or how about Mirza's disease? Mirza is the first person in UK, Sophia Mirza, to get chronic fatigue syndrome on her death certificate as a cause of death. So these are two very important people. Why aren't we calling it that? Mirza's disease sounds like a really bad disease, or Defoe's disease still sounds like a really bad disease, merits more investigation. So yeah, those are my suggestions. So that's, kind of the talk around the naming, different names of chronic fatigue syndrome. Hopefully that gives you a little bit more knowledge, a little more insight into what's going on with the controversy. And next time I'm going to talk about the symptoms. I'm going to go more into depth about it, and I hope that you will tune in, like my movie, like my blog, subscribe to my blog, or go to my fundraiser. Anyways, thank you.